major resource, which is their people, their labor force. That's what China has had going for it all along. Its one major resource was labor and skill and people power. They didn't have a lot in terms of resources in many areas, but they always had a wonderfully large and diverse and energetic population. Well, so here comes the UN and all these glad-handers, and they sell the idea of population reduction. And so what's happened is that in many countries, including our own, yeah, the population has been reduced to a point where we're facing population collapse. We're facing the aging of our working population. And so as a result, we're not facing overpopulation, we're all facing population collapse. And that's going to be even worse for China, because China relies upon its people power to make a living. What happens when there aren't enough Chinese workers to run the factories? I guess they'll have to import workers, or they'll have to shut down, which will then, collapse in their economy. And, what happens from there? We should be asking the same question ourselves. Why do you think that there's this crazy, this movement to bring in immigrants from all corners? It's because the US population is collapsing. Why are they doing it throughout Western Europe? Why do we have refugees from Yemen and Iraq and Libya being resettled in Norway, of all places? It's because the native population is collapsed. They're not having enough babies to replenish their population. They're losing by 2, 3, 4, 5% a year. And we're so stupid that we don't stop and look at the real statistics. We just hear this yammering on the television, the boob tube, and the talking heads. And as a result, we get this whole situation where we have a skewed view of reality that is 180 degrees diametrically opposed to what's real. If you listen to the politicians and you listen to the talking heads, you're living in fear of China. But China isn't the problem. China's got more than enough problems of its own, just by itself. And all of these things are not hidden, but they aren't told. They aren't talked about in the public media. And because they aren't talked about, people don't think about it. Like I told you, there are 22 wars ongoing right now on this planet. 22 hot wars with people shooting at each other and, committing atrocities on all sides. Most of these wars are happening in Africa, with the countries of Africa having to repel colonial mercenaries intent on stealing their resources and commandeering their governments again. Anyone who thought that colonialism is dead needs to take a look at what really goes on in the world. We've had a constant flood of colonialist interests from Europe into Africa over the past 2 decades, culminating, I think, in the attack on Muammar Gaddafi. He was trying to set up an African Union that would be producing its own gold asset-based currency. And that's what really sealed his doom. It was just the fact that he was breaking the old colonial mold and giving the people of Africa some empowerment over their own resources, their own land, their own money. And Europe just couldn't stand that. And so now we've got the same old bilkers down there in Africa, the same people that brought us the Boer War, going in there, hiring mercenaries, doing this horrible business of herding people into these open air camps and starving them to death. And we're sitting here, we're clueless. We don't hear about this in the mainstream news. We hear about two wars. We hear about the quote unquote proxy war in Ukraine, and we hear about the Gaza Strip fighting in Israel, and we hear nothing at all about what's going on in Africa. Over 800,000 Ethiopians have been killed. 800,000. That's 16 Vietnams, people, in the course of a year and a half. And we hear nothing. Our media broadcasts nothing. There's no word of anything being done for the refugees. Nothing about, medical care or assistance being sent to these countries that are under attack from Europe, from these old European powers that were supposed to have ended colonialism 50, 60 years ago. No, they never ended colonialism. They never gave up their predatory programs. They just doubled down and changed it to a new jurisdiction where they had military coups, and they took over militarily and established all these bogus protectorates that were nothing but the British Raj multiplied to be, the Congo Raj, the Somali Raj, the Ethiopian Raj, the Egyptian Raj, the West German Raj, then the German Raj in general, then the Polish Raj. All of these things are nothing but Raj, Raj, Raj. They're the identical, cookie cutter, identical thing that Mahatma Gandhi fought in India. And it's all colonialism.
It's terrible that we don't hear about any of that. It's just very, very frustrating, and it just shows you what a stranglehold we have in America on information from the controlling